Hey everybody, it's Matt. Wrestling with Whiskey is back, and I'm doing something I've wanted to do for a long time. And that is try to find what's the best whiskey and Coke. Right? This is something that's gone on for ages. I'm sure there's a million videos on this, but I wanted to dive into it for myself. Bourbon and Coke, Jack and Coke, Rye and Coke, Canadian Club and Coke, all this, so anything. And Coke, scotch and soda, for Christ's sake. So I, over the last couple of weeks, have gone through a lot of my bourbons. Now, I don't have everything, but I have a good collection. And I went through about 15, 20 different bourbons that I thought might be good, really good with a Coke. And I found my top 5. And they are here in front of you. A very, smorgasbordy pick, a very eclectic group. Some surprises in here. We have Jack Daniel's Single Barrel. Jack and Coke is a classic. This single barrel product really stood out. Mellow Corn, a straight bonded corn whiskey from Heaven Hill that's been around forever, is cheap as hell, but something in the corn I thought mixed pretty well. Bardstown Bourbon's Fusion, which is a mix of old source bourbon and some of their younger distillate. That blend worked really well. A classic in Russell's Reserve. Some of the rich flavors in here, the higher proof, really came through, and I thought, for me anyway, that worked well when I'm mixing with the soda, which tends to dilute a lot. And then Elijah Craig Barrel Proof, B518. This is a very strong barrel proof bourbon. This is in the 130s. Just double check it. Yeah, this is 133.4. And again, same thing, those rich flavors. The tobacco, the caramels, the barrel proof came strongly through. And so I really thought it stood out. And so we're going to find out what goes with Coke. Now, I know this is, before anybody explodes, I know this is Coke Zero. And people say no diets, no Coke Zero. It's got to be real Coke with the sugar and all this stuff. But this is my go-to Coca-Cola product. It's my go-to soda when push comes to shove. And so I'm using it. Deal with it. Now, we're going to be using these 7.5 ounce cans because after a lot of trial and error, after a lot of research on my own, the best ratio I've found for whiskey to Coke is about 5-to-1. In a big glass, you do about 2 ounces to about 10 ounces of Coke. So shrinking it down, these are perfect 7.5 ounces of Coke to 1.5 ounces of bourbon or whiskey. For me, it ends up making an even playing field, ends up making a good solid ratio. We're going to test it at that. Okay, we got to start with the classic, Jack and Coke. Now typically you see the old 97, the black label Jack Daniel's, but I'm not such a huge fan of that, I'll be honest. But I did pick up a couple of Jack Daniel's single barrels that I've loved, both barrel proof and the standard 94 proof. And this one was really nice, and so I tried it, and it ended up sticking through several rounds of tasting that I did. So this is a single barrel select. This is 47%. Now, like I said, 94 proof single barrel product. So there can be a lot of variance in these. This one, like I said, I feel like it's a positive one. We have our 1.5 ounces of whiskey poured. Now we've got our cocktail in a can, as it were, because a lot of people miss that a Jack and Coke essentially is a 3-ingredient cocktail, even though there's only 2 liquids being combined. Because Coke, even though this is diet, there's no real sugar, it's got a sweetener, the spices, and whatever Coca-Cola's proprietary blend, of course they won't tell you, it's kind of like the bitters and everything, that's a little bit of that flavoring. And then you add the whiskey. Sugar, bitters, whiskey. It's pretty much what a Jack and Coke is. It's just a pre-made cocktail mix. Cheers. It's nice. There's this gummy, almost like, you can tell it's like that sweet corn, that almost molassesy from the high corn mash bill of Jack Daniel's. It's a little on the overly sweet side in a way to me. Again, I don't know if it's because of that sweeter nature of the corn and whatnot. And the more I'm going back to it, I'm not loving it. Not bitter, but it's like I said, it's almost like this gummy, almost like stale candy. Like there's a sweetness there. It's not bad, but it ain't good anymore. So beginning the Jack Daniels. Let's move on. All right, folks, moving on. The sleeper of the group, Mellow Corn, a bonded corn whiskey from Heaven Hill. Now, corn whiskey has different rules than bourbon. It does not, and it usually is not, stored in new barrels. It's often used barrels. This is bonded, so it still follows the bottle and bond rules. It's got to be at least 4 years old, 100 proof, bonded warehouse, 1 distillation season, 1 master distiller, so on and so forth. You can read all the rules online. But this has been around for a long time. Corn whiskey. Off the top of my head, I don't know the exact mash bill, but I believe it's pretty close to 100% corn. So this is like a single malt, only it's a single kernel whiskey, I suppose. So all corn. Kind of like sometimes 100% rye. This baby is all corn. So there's not really rye spice in there as much. There's not much, if any, malted barley to kind of counteract that. This is pure corn flavor distilled. And it kind of stuck out, surprisingly. And again, I thought the sweetness, like in Jack Daniels, might work well. And so that's what stuck out, I think, for me with the Mellow Corn and the Coke. But let's see how it goes. Cheers. So that's got that kind of gummy, candy-ish, but it's a little bit brighter. Almost buttery nature to it. Like this almost tastes like popcorn. Popcorn flavor mixed into soda. It's lighter, brighter. There is this candied sweetness to it. Again, and despite there not being sugar in it, because I use Coke Zero, this is very like light and sweet and in a good way. I like this a lot. I see you, Mellow Corn. All right, here we are, round 3. We are introducing the Bardstown Bourbon Fusion Series. Now, this is a newer one to the marketplace. Bardstown Bourbon Company's been around for a couple of years. They've done a lot of contract distilling. They've done a lot of collaborations with places like Copper and Kings, the Prisoner Wine, Chateau de Labade. I did the video on it. I'm not saying the name again. But Armagnac collaborations using a lot of their sourced bourbon. Now, they've sourced from Kentucky and Indiana all over. Incredible, well-aged source bourbon. But they are producing their own. And while it's not of age yet, they are incorporating it into their Fusion series. So there is younger distillate from Bardstown Bourbon Company blended in with some of their older aged sourced stock. And this is their first, a little bit more on the middle of the range as opposed to some of their premium products. This one's around $60. It's a blend. I'll read it right from the side because that's one thing I love about Bardstown Bourbon Company is they're super transparent. They will tell you what the mash is everywhere they can that legal NDAs allow them or don't allow. But anything they can say, they will say. So this blend is a blend of, I believe this is Fusion Series 1. This is the first release. So it's 40% of sourced Kentucky bourbon, 11 years, 7 months old. 60% is theirs, which is 18% of their wheated 2-year, 3-month mash bill, and then 42% of their 2-year, 1-month rye mash bill. It's a higher rye, 36%. That is bright, and yet it's kind of got this depth that you wouldn't expect. So let's see how they go with Coke. Whiskey and Coke, normally they don't talk about oak, but this is the first one, because of that mixed in age there, I'm getting actually a little bit of, you can get a little bit of oak, a little more spice in this one than in the other two as well. And that just comes from the maturity of that 11 plus year bourbon that's in there. Even though it's only 40% of the blend, it still definitely makes its presence known in this Whiskey and Coke. It's not as bright or as sweet as the Mellow Corn, but again, there's this depth to it that you wouldn't expect out of a Whiskey and Coke. All right, cheers, Bardstown. Moving right along. All right, we're coming down near the end. We're getting down to our last two Whiskeys and Coke Here we jumped into the Russell's Reserve single barrel. To be clear, this is not a store pick. This was a standard single barrel off the shelf. That being said, of course there are variances from bottle to bottle, from barrel to barrel. But this one is just a standard one off the shelf. And I love the Russell's picks because, and the single barrels, because they have this rich caramel. You hear the Russells talk about it all the time. It's a little bit more of that caramel, cherry, fruit, vanilla forward, as opposed to the spicier, 101, the standard Wild Turkey products. This has a little bit more bold, and obviously the proof is higher as well at 110. And so it brings a little bit more character, at least a different character from the standard Wild Turkey products. And so that's what really stuck out to me in the Coke. As well, again, we're moving up higher in proof. We are over 100 now for the first time in this competition. And as someone who likes a spirit-forward cocktail, that really shone through. So let's see how it stands up today. And right off the bat, it's bolder, it's rounder, it's more substantial, if you will. All these Diet Cokes always have a little bit of a weird, bitter, drying kind of sensation, but it seems to be a little bit more enhanced with the Russells, unfortunately. This is a weird one because it starts so good. Like bold vanillas, all the flavors of the Coke are amplified with this whiskey, but then it immediately dissipates to this sharper bitterness than the other ones have had so far. That being said, the flavor in here is awesome, so it's going to be hard to count this one out. Russells and Coke, not too shabby. All right, here we are, ladies and gentlemen, down to the last one, and we are down to the Big Bad Wolf. Elijah Craig Barrel Proof. B5 1.8. So this is from 2 years ago. Still have a bottle left of this, thank goodness. This is a really, really strong, really quality, deep flavored bourbon. 12 years old, age stated right on the side. Another thing I love about these barrel proof products. And to be fair, when you can find this, it's usually around $60, $65. I remember getting this for $50 actually. It was on sale at Total Wine when I was on the road. It's an incredible deal for a full-strength, uncut, unfiltered product, 12 years age stated. I mean, in this one, 133.4 proof. That means that this whiskey, for those of you who don't understand, most standard whiskeys, spirits across the world are about 40%. Less than half of the spirit is actually alcohol, right? This is 66.7% alcohol. This is almost like 65+% of this liquid is pure alcohol. This is a strong, strong product. That's what originally stood out to me in my initial taste tests. Let's see if that stands true amongst the rest of them today. Cheers to the main event. Whew. Right off the bat, it doesn't burn like it would like sipping it neat or even with ice because there's enough Coke to really dilute it, but it immediately lets you know that it's there. Caramel oak is coming through again. 12 years in this whole batch here. This isn't a blend in this case. This is all 12-year whiskey, barrel proof. A little astringency of the alcohol trying to mix with the Coke in there. It's a little bit in there, that's for sure. But it doesn't punch you in the face as much as you would think, being as strong as it is. That being said, again, I love the wood flavors. There's a little bit, again, spice again is here. That's not in a lot of the other lighter whiskeys. So this one is a really strong contender. It is bold. You got to be careful because probably one of these sets you just fine for a while because of the strength of this whiskey. This is going to be a tough competition. So this was a really tough competition. Everybody here brought something different to the game, which is exactly what I wanted. I wanted to try a variety of mash bills, ages, blends, single barrels, etc. to see what was going to be the best whiskey and Coke. It was honestly really close. It came down between two, and I'm going to give you the two right now. So I'll tell you this, the winner was not Jack and Coke. The winner, as rich as it was not Elijah Craig Barrel Proof. The winner was not a classic of American bourbon, Russell's Reserve. It came down to be a relative newcomer in Bardstown Bourbon Company with their blend of old source stock and their younger stock, and nearly bottom shelf stalwart Mellow Corn, a bonded corn whiskey. So in the end, honestly, I went back and forth sipping these again multiple times, and by a nose, I'm not kidding. So number one, all of these made incredible whiskeys and coke. And between the two of these, they both made outstanding whiskey and cokes. But the winner was, by a margin, Bardstown Bourbon Company Fusion Series. This is number one. I know number two is on shelves. There was a bright sweetness to the Mellow Corn, but there was something about the balance and the brightness of the younger high rye bourbon that I think is blended in here that makes up most of Bardstown's own distillate. But then the other chunk was that well-aged Kentucky-sourced bourbon. And so I think that balance works well on its own, and it shone through in the Coca-Cola. Congrats to Bardstown Bourbon Company's Fusion Series and being my favorite whiskey and coke. Now I know there's a million options. What do you guys like to drink with whiskey and coke? Let me know in the comments below. Let me know how much you hate my decision in the comments below. Like, subscribe, comment. Let me know everything. Turn on the alerts too. Make sure you do that. And we will see you next time. Until then, try different things with your coke. Try different cocktails. And always, always, always be wrestling with whiskey.